Why is she playing that sad song again? No one at school knew the truth behind Maya's trembling hands and distant eyes. As she played the old courtyard piano alone during recess, her classmates mocked her. But behind each note was a secret they couldn't see. Her brother was in a coma that very day. What began as a silent goodbye turned into a miracle that would transform an entire community. This unforgettable story of a quiet girl and her music will leave you in tears and believing again in the power of love, courage, and one unfinished song. Now, before we dive deeper, please subscribe to our channel. We share powerful, meaningful stories like this every day. And drop a comment below to let us know where you're watching from. Thank you so much. And now let's get back to the story. Why is she just sitting there again? A boy's voice murmured from the swings. I don't know. Another replied with a shrug. Maybe she thinks she's some kind of pianist. They laughed, the kind of casual laughter that cuts sharper than intention ever admits. But Maya didn't turn around. She was sitting alone on the edge of the cracked wooden piano bench in the school courtyard, a little off to the side of the playground, where the grass had grown too long and the paint had chipped from the walls. The old upright piano was supposed to be decorative, a remnant from a forgotten arts program no one had time for anymore. Its top panel was warped from years of sun and rain. A couple of keys stuck. Some were permanently out of tune, but none of that mattered to her. Her fingers hovered just above the faded ivory keys. They didn't press down. Not yet. Her eyes, rimmed red from hours of silent crying, stared into the warped wood, not seeing it. Seeing something else. Someone else. Across the field, the children shouted tossed balls, chased each other through clouds of laughter. The wind carried a warm breeze and the smell of mulch and sun-baked rubber. But none of it reached her. Maya sat in her own world, surrounded by noise, yet wrapped in silence. She was 11, with soft brown skin and jet-black braids tied with blue ribbon, now loose and fraying. Her shirt was buttoned unevenly. She'd dressed herself too quickly that morning. Her socks didn't match. Her shoes were dusty from the hospital's parking lot. But her posture was careful. Every inch of her being seemed to be listening to something no one else could hear. She pressed the first note. It rang out with a soft, sad timbre. Then another and another, each one slightly off from how it should sound, but somehow that made the melody even more human, raw, fragile, like it was about to fall apart. She played slowly, unsure if she had the strength to finish. In the music room earlier that week, she'd overheard her teacher describe that piano as just for show. But to Maya, it was the only way she knew to speak, not in words, not in sentences, but in aching notes that quivered with memory. Her brother Liam used to play this song for her, hum it mostly. He'd made it up himself when she was 5 and afraid of thunder. He'd sit with her by the window, tap out the rhythm on the windowsill and say, "Close your eyes, I'll make the storm sound like a story." And somehow it always did. This morning she had whispered something into his ear at the hospital. "I'll play it for you today. I promise." He hadn't responded. Machines beeped steadily beside him. His head was wrapped in white gauze. The doctors had said words she didn't understand fully, but she knew what coma meant. She knew what it meant when her mom dropped to her knees in the hallway. The accident had happened just before dawn. A car, a bend in the road, the rain. Her mom hadn't given details, just said, "He's sleeping right now," and urged her to go to school. "Liam would want you to go," she'd said, holding back tears that broke the moment Maya walked away. Now at recess, Maya didn't know how to explain the kind of pain that doesn't have language. So she played. Her left hand trembled on the low notes. She missed one, then another, but she didn't stop. The melody was broken deliberately so, as if she were weaving his name into every chord. No one noticed her lips move as she silently counted the beat. 1, 2, 3. Remember? 1, 2, 3. Remember. A gust of wind blew a few fallen leaves across the cracked blacktop. Children screamed with joy, running to chase them like butterflies. Maya didn't flinch. "She's still at it," said a voice nearby. It was Clara, a classmate with a cruel smile and too much attention. "She's always playing something creepy. My mom says it's not normal to be obsessed with sad stuff." Maya heard it. She heard all of it. But the music didn't stop. Inside the school building, through a pane of glass, a fourth-grade teacher paused as she passed by the hallway. She caught sight of Maya hunched and still playing with a quiet intensity that seemed too large for her small frame. The teacher frowned, squinted, then walked on. Just another strange kid, she thought. Recess coping, nothing serious. But the school nurse knew. She was the only one who'd gotten the call that morning. Maya's mother had spoken in a trembling whisper over the phone. "Please, if she's quiet today, if she seems off, her brother, he's in a coma. I didn't know where else to send her." The nurse had nodded, even though no one could see it. She sat at her desk now, staring at the clock, then out the window toward the courtyard where Maya sat. She recognized the music. Not the melody, but the emotion in it. Grief without sound. Longing without release. And across town, Liam's ICU monitor ticked on. Unchanged. Unmoved. The keys under Maya's fingers began to blur. She blinked. Once. Twice. She clenched her jaw. She had promised she'd play this for him. That he would somehow hear her. That his fingers might twitch. That maybe, just maybe, some part of him would recognize the music they used to share. "Just let me finish," she whispered to the piano. "Please don't break on me now." The wind picked up again. A leaf landed on the keys and she brushed it away. Then she stopped. The final chord was the one she never heard him play. He always left it unfinished on purpose. "So you can finish it one day," he used to say. It was their joke, but now it wasn't funny. She didn't know what the last note should be. Her hand hovered. She looked up, not at the playground, not at the kids who didn't see her, but at the sky. She imagined Liam's laugh. His stupid hair. The way he used to do victory dances in the kitchen when she beat him at cards. The way he told her every time she played the piano, "You're better than you know, Maya. Don't let them tell you otherwise." Her fingers moved on their own. The final note rang out like a question and an answer. A moment later, a ball hit the side of the piano and jolted her. "Oops!" a boy called out. Not meaning it. Maya startled, the bench creaked under her. Her hand slipped off the keys. She stood up, brushing her skirt, and walked away without a word. She didn't cry. Not then. Her eyes were too dry for tears. Back near the swings, Clara smirked again. "Weird as ever?" Maya didn't turn back. The bell rang. The playground emptied. The wind moved the piano lid slightly, creaking it shut by a few inches. It sounded like a sigh. And in the hospital, a boy's finger twitched. That night, the house was too quiet. No television, no radio. Not even the usual hum of the dishwasher that Liam always forgot to unload. Just silence, thick and unnatural, pressing in from every corner. Maya sat on the edge of the couch, her knees drawn up to her chest, clutching a pillow to her stomach like a life raft. The piano keys still echoed in her head. Not the ones from school, but the ones in her memory, the ones from home. Liam's notes, his rhythm. The way he played like the piano was an extension of him. The house had a small electric keyboard in the corner. It still had the sticker stars on middle C that Liam had used to teach her when she was little. "That one's you," he'd say, tapping the bright blue star. "Right in the center of everything." She hadn't touched it in weeks. Now it sat collecting dust, quiet and waiting like Liam. From the kitchen, her mother's voice drifted in hoarse and strained murmuring on the phone. "They said they're still swelling. No, he hasn't responded yet. I know they can't promise anything." Her voice cracked into silence, followed by the sound of a mug being set too hard on the counter. Maya didn't move. In her pocket was a folded slip of paper, creased at the edges from being opened and closed too many times. It was a drawing, one she made months ago. It was Liam and her on a stage, bathed in light with a crowd clapping beneath them. She had drawn little musical notes all around, and Liam was holding her hand up like she had just won a competition. She pressed the paper to her chest. "I played it, Liam," she whispered into the empty room. "I finished your song." The tears finally came. Not loud or messy, just quiet, steady, like rain tapping a window through the night. The next morning at school, Maya didn't speak. She moved like a shadow, slipping from class to class, her head low, her eyes unreadable. Teachers glanced at her, hesitating, but didn't ask. It's easier not to ask. Easier to assume everything is fine when a child doesn't cry out loud. By recess, she was back at the courtyard piano. She didn't sit this time. She stood beside it, just staring. Some younger kids had drawn on the wood with chalk hearts flowers a crooked smiley face. Maya reached out, ran her hand gently along the faded keys, then pulled back. She felt hollow. Not the kind of emptiness that comes from sadness, but the kind that follows when you give everything and it's still not enough. The final note was supposed to change something. It hadn't. Liam was still asleep, still unmoving, still locked behind glass and machines, and she was still just the girl who played at recess while others laughed and called her strange. A voice startled her. "Hey!" Maya turned. It was Dylan, a tall boy with messy blonde hair and a varsity jacket that didn't quite fit him yet. He was in high school a few years older. She recognized him vaguely. He'd once come with Liam to pick her up from a science fair. "I thought that was you," he said, his tone softer than expected. "You're Maya, right, Liam's sister?" Her throat clenched. She gave a tiny nod. Dylan stepped closer, his eyes flicking to the piano, then back to her. "I heard you playing yesterday." Maya looked down, suddenly ashamed. "I didn't mean to be weird," she said quickly, her voice barely audible. No, he said, shaking his head. "It wasn't weird. It was, I don't know, it sounded like him." She looked up, surprised. He smiled gently. He used to play that tune before every game, said it helped him focus. None of us knew where it came from. "Guess it was your song." Her lips parted, but no words came out. "He always talked about you, you know," Dylan continued. "Said you were the real musician in the family, that he just faked it." Maya blinked, her eyes misting. "He told us he made that song for you when you were little, called it Stormlight." Dylan gave a soft laugh. "We just thought it was some code word for football plays." She let out the tiniest breath of a laugh. "Coach told us this morning," Dylan said more seriously. "About the accident, about the coma." He paused. "I'm sorry, Maya." Maya stared at the piano. "I thought if I played it, maybe he'd hear me." Dylan nodded slowly. Maybe he did. She turned to him, eyes wide. "Do you think that's possible?" He didn't hesitate. "Yeah, I do." The bell rang. Kids began to pour out of the cafeteria and classrooms, rushing back to the field. Dylan offered a little wave before heading toward the exit gate. But as he walked away, Maya felt something shift inside her. Someone had heard her, and not just the notes, but the meaning. Later that day in the music room, something unusual happened. Mrs. Kelsey, the music teacher, who normally ran class with strict tempo and little tolerance for improvisation, paused mid-lesson and asked, "Maya, would you like to share a piece with us?" Heads turned. A few kids whispered. Maya froze. She hadn't expected that. She was about to shake her head when Dylan's voice echoed in her mind. "He always talked about you. You were the real musician." Her hand rose instead. Mrs. Kelsey gestured toward the classroom piano. Maya walked slowly, each step weighted with fear and something stronger, resolve. She sat, fingers trembling slightly above the keys, then began to play. Not the whole song, just the middle section. Just the part Liam used to whistle when they were baking cookies, and he'd spin the mixing bowl like a turntable, making her laugh. A stillness fell over the room. The usual giggles and fidgeting died away. This wasn't a polished performance. It wasn't loud or showy, but it was real. Maya finished with the soft, unfinished chord, the one she'd held back before. When she stood, the room was silent. Then came something she didn't expect, clapping. From the back row, from the front, from Mrs. Kelsey. It wasn't loud, but it was enough. After class, Mrs. Kelsey knelt beside her. "Where did you learn that song, sweetheart?" Maya looked up. "My brother wrote it." The teacher's face softened. "He's very talented," Maya whispered. "He's in a coma." Mrs. Kelsey's hand gently rested on her shoulder. "Then today, he played through you." That night, Maya sat at the little keyboard at home and played again. This time, her mother joined her, sitting quietly nearby with a cup of untouched tea. The house didn't feel as hollow now. The notes gave shape to the silence, And across town, in a hospital room filled with beeping machines and pale blue light, Liam's eyelids flickered once, then stilled again. But the nurse saw it. She marked it down and smiled. "Do you think he heard it?" The question left Maya's lips in the hush between dusk and bedtime, when the air felt still and the walls of the house seemed to breathe with quiet exhaustion. Her mother sat at the kitchen table, both hands wrapped tightly around a cup of chamomile tea, gone cold. The question lingered between them like a fragile thread, unsure whether it would hold or break. Her mother didn't answer right away. Her eyes stared down into the mug, as if the tea leaves might somehow spell out a miracle. A soft sigh escaped her, part grief, part surrender. "I want to believe he did," she finally said, her voice rough from crying in places Maya couldn't see. "I want to believe he's still with us somehow, listening." Maya nodded slowly, though a lump tightened in her throat. "I felt something when I finished the song, like a part of him was close." Her mother reached out, brushing a curl behind Maya's ear, fingers trembling slightly. "Then that's all that matters." The silence returned, but it felt different now, less empty, more like a blanket wrapped around two people trying to hold each other together without falling apart. The next day at school, something unexpected happened. As Maya walked into the front gate, clutching her backpack and moving in her usual quiet rhythm, she noticed students gathered in small groups, talking, not whispering about her like before, but murmuring with curiosity. Some glanced her way. Others didn't hide it. At first she thought it was about something else, maybe another fire drill, maybe a new lunch menu. Then she saw it. Taped to the glass wall outside the music room, printed in black ink on white paper, was a message: "Student Piano Tribute Today. Recess. Honoring Liam Wren." She froze. Beneath it, someone had scribbled in pen, "His little sister's playing." Her chest clenched and her heartbeat thudded in her ears. She hadn't agreed to this. She hadn't been told. Mrs. Kelsey stepped out of the room just then, noticing Maya immediately. Her eyes were soft, apologetic, but also deeply proud. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," she said gently. "I meant to ask you before posting it, but the principal insisted we do something. And when I told him about your song, he said there was no better way to honor Liam." Maya didn't speak. Her mouth opened, then closed again. She wasn't sure if she could do it. Not like this. Not in front of everyone. Mrs. Kelsey touched her arm lightly. "You don't have to. I'll take the sign down right now if you say the word." But Maya didn't say the word, because somewhere deep inside the swirl of fear and grief, another voice whispered his voice. "Don't let them tell you who you are. You finished the song. You own the stage." Recess came too fast. The bell rang, and instead of kids scattering toward the swings or lining up for snacks, a growing crowd circled the old piano. Some students leaned against the fence. A few teachers stood near the back, unsure what to expect. Maya walked through the crowd, her steps light, but her insides shaking. She could feel the eyes, the attention, the pressure. It wasn't the kind of spotlight she'd ever wanted, not the kind that came from tragedy. The piano stood where it always did, half in sunlight, half in shadow. Its keys looked dirtier than usual. Someone had left a paper flower on top, folded from notebook paper. Maya sat down. No microphone. No announcement, no speech, just her and the keys. She closed her eyes, and then she began. The first notes were uncertain. Her fingers wavered, the nerves rattling in her wrists. But then came the part she knew like breathing, the melody that wasn't just notes, but memory, heartbeats. Thunderstorms and warm blankets and the smell of burnt toast on Sunday mornings. It was Liam, and it was her. The air changed. The wind softened. A hush fell over the courtyard as the crowd leaned in. It wasn't just the music. It was what it carried. The story. The pain. The hope. By the time she reached the bridge, the section Liam always whistled with a crooked grin, her playing grew bolder, stronger, like she was no longer playing for herself, but channeling something much larger. Like Liam's spirit had reached through her and said, "Let them hear me, Maya." She finished with the final chord. The one she had never dared to write until now. It lingered in the air, trembling just slightly before fading into silence. For a moment no one moved, then a slow clap. From the back, then more, and more, until the courtyard filled with applause. Not the polite kind, the real kind. Maya stood, cheeks flushed, eyes glistening, but not with tears this time, with something stronger. Peace. For the first time in days, the weight inside her chest loosened. Mrs. Kelsey stepped forward, her voice choked with emotion. "That was breathtaking, Maya. Thank you." Someone from the front row, a boy Maya barely knew, whispered, "She played like the piano was alive." Maya smiled just barely and quietly stepped away. She thought the moment was over, but it wasn't, because as the students returned to their classes and the crowd slowly dispersed, the music teacher walked back into the building, wiping her eyes, and passed Dylan in the hallway. He had skipped class. He had stood behind the trees. He had heard every note. And he wasn't the only one. That same afternoon, in a quiet hospital room lit by the gold of the setting sun, a soft sound stirred the silence. A breath. Then a blink. Liam's monitor beeped in a new rhythm. A nurse gasped. "Doctor, I think he's waking up." Eyes fluttered, lips parted, and from a cracked throat came a whisper only the nurse could hear, "Stormlight." The hospital smelled like bleach and waiting. When Maya entered the ICU the next morning, everything about the world outside, the whispers at school, the claps after her performance, even the sunlit memory of that last chord melted into a low hum of anxiety. The hallway lights flickered faintly above her as she walked beside her mother, who hadn't said much during the drive over. She didn't need to. Her white knuckles gripped the steering wheel so hard earlier that Maya had quietly reached over and placed a hand on her arm, just to let her know she was still there. Now the elevator doors opened to the ICU floor with a heavy ding that sounded far too loud in such a quiet place. They approached Liam's room slowly. Her mother paused just outside the glass door, not breathing. Inside, Liam was still. His skin was pale. His face looked different. Not in the way that time changes someone, but in the way silence alters the air. He was present, but not quite there. His fingers, once always tapping to a rhythm or spinning a pencil like a drumstick, now rested still on the stiff white blanket. But the nurse was smiling. There was something different in the way the machines beeped. A new pattern, a new pace. "He spoke last night," the nurse said softly, turning toward Maya and her mother. "One word. It wasn't loud, but it was there." Maya's heart leapt into her throat. "What did he say?" her mother asked, her voice cracking before the sentence finished. The nurse glanced at Maya. "He said, 'Stormlight.'" Silence flooded the room. Maya blinked, and her chest rose with a shaky breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her mother turned slowly, looking down at her with eyes wide and shining. "He heard you," she whispered. Maya nodded. She wasn't sure if she believed in miracles before, but now all she could do was feel it in her bones. He had heard. She stepped closer to the bed, her fingers twitching at her side, as if they wanted a piano to speak through. Instead, she looked at her brother's face, studied every inch of it. The scar on his temple, the way his eyelashes curled, the slight part in his lips as if a thought were still forming. Maya leaned close and said, "I finished your song." No response, but the heart monitor ticked on, steady, deliberate, alive. The doctors explained that coming out of a coma wasn't like flipping a switch. It was a slow surfacing, sometimes hours, sometimes days. The brain had to fight its way back through layers of fog memory trauma. But the fact that he had spoken even just one word was enough. By the time Maya returned to school that afternoon, something had changed. She wasn't the invisible girl anymore. She didn't notice it at first, but kids stepped aside in the hallway to let her pass. A few smiled gently. Some nodded. One girl, the same one who had once mocked her for playing sad stuff, quietly placed a folded paper flower in her locker without saying a word. The piano in the courtyard now had fresh flowers laid across its top. A laminated note was taped to the front. To Maya Wren. Thank you for showing us what courage sounds like." Even the teachers had shifted. Mrs. Kelsey stopped her in the hallway with a quiet invitation. "Maya," she said, "the school board wants to start an arts revival program. They asked me who I'd recommend for the first performance at the district recital. I told them about you. If you're ready, the stage is yours." Maya stared at her. "I've never played on a stage before," Mrs. Kelsey smiled. "You've already played on one, sweetheart. The biggest one of all, your truth. Everything else is just lights." That night, Maya sat on her bedroom floor, surrounded by sheet music and silence. Her hands rested on her lap as her eyes moved between the scattered pages, some of them crumpled, others unfinished. The melody Liam had made was there, written only in her mind until now, but slowly coming together like pieces of a puzzle she was finally ready to see. She picked up a pencil and began to write, not just notes, but a story. The next few days passed in a quiet rhythm. Liam's condition improved little by little. He didn't speak again right away, but his eyelids twitched more often. Once he squeezed their mom's hand faintly. The doctors said his brain activity was promising. The nurse started playing soft classical music in the background during visits. Maya noticed the way Liam's breathing seemed to sync with the rhythms. Then came the recital. It was held in the auditorium of the high school, Liam's high school. The stage was wide and curved, framed by red velvet curtains and tall spotlights that made the piano shine like something sacred. Maya stood backstage in a simple dress, her shoes too big, her heart thudding like a drum in her chest. Dylan appeared beside her, offering a small nod. "You ready?" "No," she admitted. "That's okay," he said. "The best ones never are." She stepped onto the stage to polite applause, but her eyes scanned the crowd for only one person. And there he was. Liam, in a wheelchair, eyes half-lidded but open. Awake, breathing, watching. Her mother sat beside him, hands clasped, a tissue gripped tightly. Maya sat down at the grand piano. This one was different from the courtyard's battered relic. This one gleamed under the lights. The keys were crisp, untouched. But as her fingers settled into place, she realized the music didn't come from the piano. It came from her. The lights dimmed slightly. The hush settled. And then she began. First, the familiar notes, the ones he hummed, the ones she played through grief and guilt. Then she built on them, adding flourishes, gentle waves of harmony, a soft bridge that felt like walking barefoot through memory. She wove in a motif she'd never dared play out loud, a variation of the lullaby her mother used to sing when Liam was sick. It was their life wrapped in chords, and at the end a silence, a pause. And then, the final note. Not sad, not broken, but bold, bright, full of hope. When she stood, the auditorium was silent. Then it erupted. Not with the applause of formality, but with the roar of something real. Teachers stood, students clapped, some even cried, and Maya's eyes found Liam's. His lips moved. Just 2 words. "Thank you." And that was all she needed. The applause faded slowly like the tail end of a thunderstorm. But for Maya, the sound lingered far longer in her chest than in her ears. It wasn't just noise. It was something she had never expected to feel from a room full of strangers, understanding. And more than that, belonging. She stepped down from the stage, her shoes clicking softly against the polished floor, her dress swaying slightly with each breath. Mrs. Kelsey met her backstage teary-eyed, unable to speak for a moment. She simply opened her arms, and Maya stepped into them, burying her face in the soft fabric of her blouse. The hug said more than any compliment could. "You didn't just play, Maya," the teacher whispered, her voice thick. "You told the whole world who you are." A soft knock behind them made Maya turn. It was the nurse from Liam's ICU room, standing next to Liam's wheelchair. Her brother's head was tilted slightly, his eyes watching her in that calm, steady way he always used when she used to mess up a chord and start over again. That look that said, "I've got you, keep going." She rushed forward. The nurse gave her space, and for the first time in weeks, Maya crouched beside her brother face to face, heart to heart. I played it, she said softly. Liam's voice was hoarse, barely audible, but he managed to form a grin that was unmistakably his. You crushed it, he rasped. Maya laughed, a small, choked sound, part joy, part disbelief. It didn't matter that his voice cracked or that he could only say a few words. He was awake, he was there, and he had heard her. The auditorium slowly emptied. Families embraced kids, took photos. Teachers stacked programs into neat piles. But Maya stayed beside Liam's wheelchair, her hand resting gently on his. Stormlight, he whispered again, the word now threaded with meaning. You remembered it, she said, tears rising again. But they didn't fall. Not this time. This time she held them, like light cupped in her palms. I never forgot. He paused, trying to catch his breath. His voice was faint, but resolute. I heard you, in the dark. That last note, it was like a door opened. Maya nodded slowly, barely breathing. You finished it, he said. You gave it an ending. No, she said. We did. Their mother stepped close, brushing a hand through Liam's hair, her other arm around Maya's shoulders. She didn't say anything either. She just stood with them, together, for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. Later that evening at home, the house felt different. It wasn't brighter or louder, but it breathed again. The silence no longer echoed like grief. It pulsed with quiet resilience. The corners of the living room no longer felt heavy with absence. Instead, everything seemed to hum softly with new possibility. Liam rested in the den, propped up with pillows and blankets, his voice still recovering but his smile appearing more often now. He watched old cartoons with the volume low, and the window cracked open beside him, the spring breeze drifting in like music. Maya sat at the keyboard. This time she wasn't hiding. She wasn't grieving. She was creating. The sheet music in front of her was no longer blank. It was filled with archetypes dynamics, marks of emotion, not just structure. She titled the piece Stormlight, but under the title she wrote in small cursive letters, For those who hear us even in silence. That night, Liam asked her to play it again, and she did, sometimes changing it slightly, letting it evolve as he hummed along, adding quiet harmonies with his finger tapping the armrest of the couch, the way he used to. Only now his rhythm was slower, but it was his. Within the week, the school paper ran a front-page story titled, Young Pianist Plays Brother Out of a Coma. Maya blushed when Dylan showed it to her. I didn't play him out of it, she insisted. I just reminded him where the way back was. He laughed. You're too humble, but fine. However you say it, it's still the most incredible thing I've seen all year, Mrs. Kelsey arranged for Maya to record her piece professionally. She brought in an old friend who worked at a local studio, and soon Maya was standing in a sound booth with headphones too large for her small head, and her hands poised over a grand piano that sounded like liquid gold when she touched it. Each note she played in that studio felt like she was laying bricks on a bridge between hearts, between past and future grief and healing pain and promise. When the recording was done, they sent it to a national youth arts program. It was a long shot, they said. But the email came 2 weeks later. Maya had been selected as one of 5 finalists for a scholarship program dedicated to young composers who used music to tell personal stories of resilience. The concert would be held in Chicago. Liam smiled wider than he had in months when he heard. You're gonna need a new dress, he teased. Maya laughed. You're gonna need to start walking so you can come. He held up a hand for a fist bump. Deal. The trip to Chicago felt like a dream. She performed on a Steinway in a concert hall that looked like a cathedral-high arches velvet seats, 1,000 eyes watching from the dark. But she didn't shake this time. She didn't worry. Because in the front row sat Liam, still in a wheelchair, but stronger cheeks, fuller color back in his face. Beside him, their mother clutched a program like it was made of glass. And behind them, dozens of strangers who were ready to listen. This time, Maya played not just to be heard, but to give something back. To all the kids who played alone, to all the voices drowned in noise, to every heart that ever waited for a miracle in the silence. She played for them, and the music soared. Snow fell that night in Chicago, soft and slow like ashes from heaven. The city outside the concert hall glittered in silence, the street lamps casting halos over the sidewalks. Inside the walls of the performance venue still held on to the last echoes of Maya's final chord long after the applause had faded, after the audience had risen to their feet, after the stage lights dimmed to black. Backstage, Maya sat on a worn green room sofa, her dress slightly wrinkled, her shoes kicked off beneath her. Her fingers still tingled, not from nerves, but from a kind of electricity that hadn't left her since she stepped away from the piano. It was the same feeling she had the day Liam whispered, "Stormlight," like something invisible had passed through her and settled into the air. Her mother entered quietly, holding a bouquet wrapped in paper, still misted with dew from the flower shop down the street. She knelt before her daughter, placing the bouquet gently on her lap. "From Liam," she said softly. Maya looked down. In the center of the bouquet, nestled between pale roses and lavender, was a folded card. On it, in Liam's scratchy handwriting, were 4 words, "You brought me back." Maya's throat tightened. Her arms wrapped around the bouquet like it was something sacred. He hadn't said much since Chicago. His voice still cracked. Some days were harder than others, but he was getting stronger, walking more, smiling easier. And tonight he had made it, not in a wheelchair, not with assistance, but on his own 2 feet. She had seen him standing there quietly in the front row, arms crossed like he used to at her recitals when she was just starting. Not clapping louder than the others, not making a big deal of it. Just present, just him. "I thought about quitting," Maya whispered. "Before all this, I thought maybe music didn't matter." Her mother's eyes welled. "Music didn't just matter, Maya. It saved us." They sat like that for a long time. Mother and daughter in the warmth of shared silence. The next morning, back home, the world returned to its softer rhythms. The buzz of the alarm, the smell of toast, the sound of Liam trying to sneak leftover cookies before breakfast and failing miserably. But something had changed in the way the house felt. There were no more closed doors, no more long pauses in the hallway. Laughter returned not loudly but truthfully. Grief still lingered in quiet corners, but it no longer controlled the light. On Sunday, Maya sat at the keyboard and asked Liam if he wanted to write something together. His eyebrows lifted. "Write a duet," she said. "Not mine, not yours, ours." He grinned like a kid who'd just been handed keys to a secret fort. "Let's make it something weird." She giggled. "Weird's my specialty." They started with a single phrase, just 4 notes bent and broken but filled with potential. Then came a series of counterpoints, humming from Liam's scratch pad, which Maya mirrored with slow, searching fingers. They didn't say much while they composed. They didn't have to. Their melody became a map of healing, of forgiveness, of finding each other in a storm. One afternoon, weeks later, they performed it for their neighborhood. The local community center had hosted a spring showcase for young artists, and someone, Mrs. Kelsey no doubt, had submitted their names as a sibling act. Maya was nervous, but Liam just shrugged and said, "We've survived worse." When they walked onto the stage together, people gasped. Some hadn't seen Liam since before the accident. Others had only heard rumors about a girl who played her brother back to life, about a boy who used to be a star athlete and had now quietly become something else, a survivor. The piano was old, but well-tuned. A single spotlight illuminated the stage. Maya sat on the left. Liam stood on the right, one hand resting lightly on her shoulder. Then they played. Their duet was unlike anything the audience expected. It wasn't flashy or loud. It wasn't perfect. But it was honest. Their notes leaned on each other, pushed and pulled like siblings in conversation, sometimes clashing, sometimes syncing, always listening. It ended with a whisper of a chord. 2 hands side by side, resting in harmony. The room stood, not with the force of a stadium roar, but with the quiet, reverent thunder of hearts recognizing something sacred. Afterward, an elderly man approached Maya with tears in his eyes. "My wife passed 3 months ago," he said. I didn't think I'd feel anything again. But your music, it made me remember her laugh." Maya didn't know what to say, so she just hugged him. Later that night, as the stars gathered above their small town and the lights dimmed across the neighborhood, Maya sat on the front porch steps with Liam wrapped in a blanket, sipping cocoa. "Do you think it'll always feel like this?" she asked. "Like what?" "Like everything hurts, but it's also beautiful." He considered that. "I think that's life," he said. "But maybe it's only the beautiful part now because of the hurt." They sat in silence, watching the moon. A gentle breeze passed through the wind chimes above them, ringing in soft, crooked notes. Maya smiled. "They're out of tune. They always were. But they still make music." Liam looked at her. "So do we." It started with a single email. Subject line: "A story worth sharing." Maya's mother had received it late one evening while folding laundry long after the dishes were done and the piano keys had gone quiet for the night. It was from a woman named Celeste Harrow, a senior producer from a national television network, someone who had stumbled upon a viral clip of Maya's district recital, the one where she played Stormlight while her brother watched from the front row. The video had been quietly uploaded to the school's arts department page. No title, no description. Just a simple caption, "Dedicated to those who keep listening." But someone somewhere had watched it, then shared it. Then others did the same, until it traveled beyond their small town, beyond the quiet school courtyard where the first note had been played into homes across the country. And then came the invitation. They wanted to feature Maya and Liam on a national segment, a human interest story. Something real, something raw, something people needed to hear. When Maya's mom read the email aloud, the room fell still. Liam was the first to break the silence. "No way," he croaked. "We're not doing that." Maya's stomach tightened. "Why not?" she asked, trying to keep her voice even. He looked away. "Because I don't want to be the guy who is in a coma. I don't want to be the miracle story." "But you are," she whispered. "And so am I." Their mother gently placed the laptop on the coffee table and sat beside Liam. Her voice was tender but firm. "You're more than that. You always have been. But sometimes people need stories like yours to remember that it's possible to come back from the dark." He didn't answer right away. Then he looked at Maya. Really looked and saw the quiet fire in her eyes. Not pride, not fame, chasing, purpose. And he nodded. The taping was scheduled for the following month. A small camera crew would arrive at their house, film interviews, take a few clips at the school, and record Maya and Liam playing Stormlight together in their living room. Nothing fancy, just truth. When the day arrived, Maya felt her heart pounding from the moment she woke. She stood in front of her mirror, braiding her hair the way Liam used to do for her before school pictured day clumsy, crooked, but filled with effort. She wore a simple white blouse and her favorite jeans. No makeup, no gloss, just herself. Liam, on the other hand, tried 3 different shirts before giving up and settling on his oldest hoodie, the one with the fraying cuffs and the faded band logo. "If they're here for the truth," he muttered, "they're getting all of it." The cameras weren't intrusive. The crew was kind. The woman conducting the interview had a voice like velvet and eyes that listened with their whole being. She asked Maya, "What did you feel that day on the piano bench, the day no one else knew?" Maya hesitated. She looked down at her hands, at the faded scar on her knuckle from when she'd once slammed the keyboard lid shut in frustration years ago. "I felt like I was playing for someone who had already left, but I didn't want to believe he was gone, so I played like he could still hear me. I think part of me hoped that music could find him where words couldn't." "And you, Liam?" the woman asked gently. "Do you remember hearing anything while you were under?" Liam nodded slowly. "I remember nothing at first, just gray. But then, music. It wasn't loud. It was like it was inside me, pulling me somewhere. Her song, it was like a thread. And when she played that final note, I saw light." There was a long pause. The interviewer blinked back tears. The cameraman sniffed. That night, after the crew had packed their equipment and left the house, felt fuller. Not because of lights or attention, but because the story had finally been spoken. Until now, it had lived only in the quiet between them. Now it had shape. It had voice. The episode aired 2 weeks later. They sat on the couch together, Maya Liam, their mom, watching it unfold in soft light and slow piano music. The producers had done it beautifully. It didn't feel sensationalized. It felt sacred. By the end of the segment, Maya's name was trending on social media. Not because she had done something flashy, but because she had reminded people of something they'd forgotten, that music isn't just sound. It's survival. Messages flooded in. From children in hospital beds, from parents who'd lost sons, from teachers in small towns who pulled out the old pianos and dusted off sheet music, and from a girl in Texas who wrote, "I'm the weird girl who plays alone at recess too. You helped me feel seen." Maya printed that message and taped it above her bed, because that, more than the cameras or applause, was why she'd finished the song. A week later, her school held a special event in the courtyard, the same space where it all began. They had repainted the old upright piano, polished the keys, and surrounded it with a small stone circle planted with lilies. The principal spoke briefly. Then Mrs. Kelsey read a plaque aloud. "In honor of Maya Wren and Liam Wren for teaching us that silence can still sing. May every child who sits at these keys remember your voice matters, even when the world doesn't hear it yet." Maya stepped forward. This time she didn't tremble. She didn't hesitate. She played not for her brother or for the cameras or even for herself. She played for every unheard voice in the crowd, and the courtyard listened, even the wind. The lilies had just started to bloom around the courtyard piano. Their delicate white petals opened slowly beneath the April sun, as if they were listening, leaning in to catch the final note of whatever Maya played next. Even the rusted corners of the old bench had been sanded smooth, painted over with soft earth tones that made it look less like a forgotten prop and more like a monument. Maya sat quietly that morning, a gentle breeze lifting strands of hair across her cheek. She wasn't playing today. Not yet. She was just breathing. Liam was returning to school in 3 days. That single thought had pulsed in her chest all morning like a second heartbeat. She'd visited him every day during recovery, brought him sketchbooks and playlists, argued over what flavor of ice cream counted as medicinal. He'd laughed more these past weeks than he had in a year. But returning to school, that was different. That was walking into a place where everything had changed, where he was no longer the golden athlete with a perfect record, but the boy who had fallen broken, nearly disappeared. And Maya, she was no longer invisible. People looked at her differently now. With admiration, with softness, but sometimes also with curiosity she couldn't quite bear. They meant well, but she often longed for the silence again, the kind where she played unnoticed and unjudged, where the piano was her escape and not her stage. She missed the comfort of anonymity, even though she'd outgrown it. "You okay?" The voice belonged to Dylan, who had become something of a quiet constant in her life. He approached with slow steps, always letting her hear him before he spoke. A habit of kindness, of respect. "Yeah," Maya said, not entirely convincingly. He sat beside her, stretching his long legs and leaning back on his palms. "You've been coming here a lot." She shrugged. "It's quieter than the music room. No one asks me what I'm working on." "You are working on something, though, right?" She hesitated, then nodded. "It's not like Stormlight. It's different. Less about pain. More about continuation." He smiled. "So a sequel?" She wrinkled her nose. "Not everything's a sequel. I mean, sometimes the best stories are the ones that grow after the climax." He said it casually, but something about the way his voice dipped made her glance at him more carefully. "You're nervous about him coming back," he said. It wasn't a question. Maya's throat tightened. "He's not the same. No one expects him to be, but he does." They sat in silence for a while, the kind that didn't demand filling. The wind carried the sound of children laughing on the field, the low hum of bees moving between the lilies, the distant creak of a swing set in need of oil. "Have you told him how you feel?" Dylan asked. She shook her head. "I don't want to burden him. He's already carrying so much." Dylan turned to her, eyes serious. You didn't just play a song and walk away, Maya. You carried him too, and maybe he needs to know he can do the same for you now. Her eyes stung, but she didn't cry. She simply nodded. That night, she stood in Liam's doorway, unsure if she should knock even though the door was open. He was sitting on the floor back against the wall, guitar in his lap. His fingers plucked lazy, uncertain strings, not quite music, yet more like the warming up of memory. You gonna come in or? She smiled faintly and crossed the room. I wrote something, she said, sitting down beside him. He didn't say anything, just set the guitar down and turned his full attention to her. She handed him a folded page of notation. Not full sheet music, just a sketched skeleton of chords and progression. In the margin, her handwriting read, "In Bloom." Liam read it slowly. This is beautiful. I want to play it at school, with you. He looked up, eyes wide. You want me to play again, like in front of people? She hesitated, then said softly, only if you're ready. But I think it would help them see you. Not the coma, not the story. Just you. Liam swallowed hard. I don't know if I can. You don't have to carry the whole melody, she said. Just meet me in the harmony. He looked at the page again. His thumb brushed the corner like it was something fragile, precious. When? He asked. Friday. Lunchtime, courtyard set. Mrs. Kelsey already saved the slot. He laughed, a nervous, breathy sound. You ambushed me. I invited you. Same difference. But he smiled. On Friday, the air was soft and the sky unusually generous with sunlight. Students gathered slowly, filling the courtyard steps and grassy knolls, whispering not with judgment, but anticipation. They'd all heard the story by now, but none of them had seen it. Until now. Maya sat at the courtyard piano again, but this time she wasn't alone. Liam stood beside her, guitar in hand, steady now. Stronger. His left hand bore a slight tremor when he adjusted the strap, but his grip was sure. They didn't speak into the microphone. They didn't introduce the piece. They simply began. In Bloom. Opened with a quiet echo of stormlight, like the memory of a dream. Then it shifted, lifted, became something new, something green and rising. Maya's chords danced like petals opening, while Liam's guitar answered gently like soil giving way to roots. It wasn't perfect. One note buzzed. A chord slipped. But none of it mattered. Because what they played wasn't about flawlessness. It was about return. The final note lingered in the courtyard air like a held breath. And when it faded, no one clapped right away. Instead, someone whispered, "Thank you." And then the hands came together. Dozens. Then more. But Maya didn't look at the crowd. She looked at Liam. And he was already looking at her. No words. Just that same smile he gave her when he used to braid her hair too tight or teach her the same chord 3 times because she always forgot. That look that said, "You brought me back, and I'm not leaving." The flowers around the piano began to wilt 3 weeks later. Not because anyone forgot about them, but because lilies never last long in spring heat. Their browning petals curled inward like hands folded in prayer, their fragrance now faded to memory. Yet no one touched them. Not Maya. Not the teachers, not even the groundskeepers. The flowers had become more than decoration. They were symbols of pain, of healing, of something that bloomed briefly but left beauty behind. The courtyard, too, had changed. Students no longer walked by the piano with indifference. They slowed. Some paused. Some sat beside it and placed their palms gently on its wood as if it still hummed with Maya's music. It did. In a way that couldn't be heard, only felt. But life was moving on, and Maya wasn't sure if she was ready for that. She found herself staying later after school, sometimes sitting alone at the piano long after the last bell had rung and the laughter of students had faded into the echoing hallways. She wasn't always playing. Sometimes she just stared at the keys, her fingers hovering but never pressing down. As if afraid to start something she couldn't finish again. It wasn't sadness. It was something stranger, an emptiness that followed triumph, a silence after applause. That Thursday, she sat with her fingers curled over middle C eyes closed, trying to remember what it felt like to play without expectation, without eyes, without stories. Then she heard footsteps behind her. "Still here." Liam's voice was stronger now, steadier. It didn't crack the way it used to, and the limp in his walk was nearly invisible. He dropped his backpack beside the bench and sat beside her without asking. "I liked it better when you needed my permission to sit," Maya teased. He smirked. "Please, you love the attention." She smiled faintly, but didn't look at him. He watched her fingers still poised above the keys. "You're not playing." "I don't know what to play." He frowned. "That's a first." "I feel like—" She hesitated, then sighed. "I feel like maybe I've already said the most important thing I had to say. And now, I'm quiet again. And this time, it's not a choice." Liam leaned back, letting his gaze wander to the clouds above. "Maybe it's not quiet," he said after a moment. "Maybe it's just rest." She glanced at him. "You ever think that maybe music isn't always about sound? Maybe it's about knowing when not to play, when to leave space?" Maya blinked. That was exactly what she used to say to him years ago when they practiced together, and he'd get carried away with chords and crowd out the melody. She'd say, "You're not giving it any air, Liam. Music needs to breathe." Now here he was saying it back to her. She exhaled a small laugh. "You thief." He nudged her shoulder. "You taught me." A long silence passed, but this one was warm, safe. Then Maya whispered, "Do you ever wish things went back to before? Before the accident? Before everything?" He was quiet. "I used to," he finally said. "But now, I don't think I'd be the same person. And I don't think you would either." She nodded. "I don't want to go back," she said. "I just don't know how to go forward yet." He reached out and pressed a single note on the piano. G sharp. It rang out into the empty courtyard, crisp and clear. "Then start here." She looked at him. "One note at a time," he said. "That's how we build again." She placed her hand beside his and added another note, then another, then a third. It wasn't a song. Not yet. But it was the start of something. 2 days later, Maya walked through the halls of her school holding a small box wrapped in soft brown paper. Inside it was a USB drive tucked into tissue labeled with careful penmanship, "Stormlight" and "In Bloom," duet arrangements and solo versions. She walked it straight to the principal's office. "Is this what I think it is?" the principal asked, eyebrows raised. Maya nodded. "I want to donate the rights to the school. Let future students use it, play it, perform it, make it their own." The principal looked at her with something between pride and awe. "I'll make sure this gets archived," he said, "and included in the music curriculum, if you're willing." Maya blinked. "Really? Really, you've changed this school, Maya. We'd be honored." That night she told Liam what she did. He looked at her for a long time, quiet, like he was absorbing the idea that his song, their song, was now part of something bigger than both of them. "You really want other people to finish it?" he asked. "I don't think it ever really finishes," Maya said. "It just keeps finding new voices." He grinned. "Then I hope one of them adds drums." They laughed until they couldn't breathe. A week later, Maya stood in the music room and watched a shy 6th grader fumble her way through the first few bars of Stormlight. Her hands trembled. Her rhythm was off. But her eyes were focused. She was trying. And Maya, sitting at the back of the room, felt her own heart swell, not because the music was perfect, but because it was alive. She wasn't the girl playing alone anymore. She was the girl who had left something behind. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was carrying grief in her hands when she touched the keys. She was carrying legacy, and it was light. The courtyard was quiet again, not because it was empty, but because it had become a place of reverence, where silence meant listening, not absence, where pauses held meaning, where even the air seemed to move more gently, as if it remembered every note Maya had once released into its sky. The piano stood beneath the fading petals of the last lily. Its surface bore new marks, now initials carved by students with trembling hands. A chipped edge from a dropped guitar case, faded ink from a spilled pen. And yet, none of it dulled its dignity. If anything, the imperfections made it sacred. It was the last day of school. Children ran through the halls with backpacks bursting, shoes squeaking, lockers slamming shut one final time for the year. Laughter echoed like bells. Teachers waved goodbye from doorways. Parents waited at curbsides, engines, idling windows rolled down. And in the center of it all, Maya lingered. She had finished her exams, cleared out her desk, hugged Mrs. Kelsey tightly, and whispered, "Thank you for seeing me when no one else did." Now she stood beside the piano one last time before summer. Liam approached slowly, no longer with the stiffness of recovery, but with ease in his step, headphones slung around his neck, fingers curled around a folded notebook. "You're not gonna cry, are you?" he teased, nudging her with his elbow. "I'm thinking about it." Maya said, her voice soft. He placed the notebook on the bench. One last gift. She opened it. Inside were lyrics. He'd written words to Stormlight. They weren't perfect, some rhymes clunky, others elegant, but they were his. They told the story not of a coma or a girl who played piano alone, but of a sibling bond that refused to die, of a world that tried to silence a melody, and the girl who refused to stop playing. "You wrote all this?" she asked. He shrugged. "It's still rough, but maybe next year we can turn it into something. Maybe even record it for real." She nodded, eyes damp. "I love it." He looked at her brow, furrowing slightly. "You okay?" She hesitated, then leaned her head against his shoulder. "I'm full." He laughed gently. "That's not an answer." "Yes, it is," she murmured. "For once I don't feel like something's missing." They stood like that for a while. Then Maya reached into her bag and pulled out a small jar glass tied with twine. Inside were slips of folded paper, each a different color. "What's this?" "A time capsule," she said. "Of all the things I didn't say out loud this year. The things I played instead." He turned the jar in his hand, studying the contents. "Can I open one?" "Not yet," she said. "Not until next year, when we come back." He nodded slowly. "Deal." The bell rang one final time. Summer had begun. Maya and Liam walked away from the piano together, their steps slow, unhurried. The courtyard grew still behind them, but they didn't look back, not because they were leaving something behind, but because they were carrying it with them now. Later that night, the house glowed with golden hour light. Their mother sat in the garden reading a book, her tea forgotten on the table beside her. Liam plucked soft chords on his guitar from the porch swing. And Maya sat at the family keyboard, not practicing, not preparing, just playing. No pressure, no story, just joy. It was a tune she hadn't named yet, something gentle, curious. It wandered through different keys as if looking for a home, but it didn't sound lost. It sounded like hope. Suddenly she felt a presence beside her. Liam had joined her, strumming quietly in harmony. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The music was enough. And in that moment, sun dipping behind trees, wind brushing through the curtains, laughter rising faintly from down the street. Everything felt right. Not because everything had been fixed, but because it had been faced, together. And somewhere in the distance, carried on memory and air, the echo of a single promise lingered: "You brought me back." Sometimes the loudest cry for help is played in a whisper no one hears. Maya sat alone at a piano, not because she wanted attention, but because she needed to hold on to her brother, because words had failed and only music remained. And in that silence, she found a voice that reached beyond hospital walls, beyond judgment, beyond fear. This story reminds us that healing doesn't always come in grand gestures. It can begin with a single note played with trembling hands by someone the world overlooked. Maya didn't just play a melody. She carried someone back from the edge with love, resilience, and courage rooted in quiet strength. The lesson: never underestimate the quiet ones. Never ignore the girl at the piano, the boy with the sketch pad, the child who chooses silence instead of noise. Because within them may live the kind of hope this world forgets to listen for. And if you've ever felt unheard, remember your voice matters, even when it trembles. Your light is seen even in the storm, and sometimes one song, one truth, one act of grace can bring someone home.